So for today, this week we're going to start into the module 8, which is your last module, the rescue module. So today we're going to talk about rescue operations and extrication. And when we talk about extrication, typically most people are going to assume that it's vehicle extrication, although it could be other things. It could be some type of machinery, or it could be anything at all that's going to require freeing a person from something. So most likely it's in the form of a vehicle accident, and they're doing vehicle extrication. So that's probably where we're going to focus most of our time. Um, has anybody ever been involved in vehicle extrication to the point where you've been either using the tools and cutting the cars, or you were able to crawl into that space and do some patient care while the extrication was going on?
Yes, both.
Yes. Both?
Both.
Okay. So first things first, when we're dealing with the extrication, if it's a vehicle accident and vehicle extrication, we need to do some things for you. So what do you need for this operation?
Say that again.
Turnout
Um,
gear.
what do you need to do this vehicle extrication?
Like as in cutting or just patient care?
Either one.
You need some type of PPE.
Yes. You guys as providers need PPE. If you're going to be the one that's gaining access into the vehicle to do some patient care, either some C-spine stabilization or assessment, or if you're going to start some interventions while they're being extricated, you're going to need some PPE. You can't just crawl in there with our regular day-to-day work uniform on. So that's going to come in the form of some type of helmet, maybe eye protection, either glasses or a face shield on the helmet. You're going to need either coat and pants or some type of overalls or something. There's different types of PPE that are out there, and it should be available to you. You should have it there on the trucks so that you can utilize it and make access in the vehicle. Um, Typically, if the extrication is going on and we put a provider in the vehicle to do some either C-spine stabilization or assessment, patient care type of thing, they'll be in contact with the patient. They'll be talking to them. And Brian says he's done this. If none of the rest of you've ever been in that situation, um, usually if it's like a front seat person, a driver or passenger, you're probably in the back seat, if that's possible, to deal with them. But you can talk them through what's going on, let them know what's happening. When the extrication process starts, there's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of commotion. They'll hear glass breaking. They hear the cutting of the metal. So that can be a little unnerving for them, especially if they can't see what's happening. Because typically, what do we do with the patients during the extrication?
Put a sheet over top of them.
Right, we cover them up. So we're going to cover them with a sheet or blanket, shield them from glass and metal, and protect them as much as possible, so they're not actually seeing all of this work that's happening, but they're hearing a lot. So they can hear folks talking, they can hear the commotion, they can hear the machines. So it can be loud and nerve-wracking for them. So make sure that you're talking and communicating to them what's happening so they can know what to expect, and there's no surprises, and that'll help them out as much as possible. Um, As far as the extrication process goes, I think everybody now has transitioned extrication to the fire departments. Years ago, EMS had all the tools, and EMS did the extrications. They did patient care, and they did the actual extrications and removals. So over the years, that has transitioned for a number of reasons, mostly manpower. That EMS has lost a lot of manpower capabilities, and so a lot of those jobs have transitioned over to the fire department. So all of the extrication now, I believe, in all of these areas around here has transitioned to the fire department. So they'll be doing the actual extrication, and the EMS folks can focus on patient care and not have to worry about also getting them out of the vehicle. So you guys, when you get on scene, you can focus on your patients, figure out if they are in a position where they have to be extricated, and then while that process is happening, you can make a decision on your assessment of whether or not you need to start some interventions while they're still in the vehicle, or if it can wait until they can get them cut out. So if it's going to be prolonged, some of these vehicles are difficult to get into. The more heavier duty vehicles, like buses and 18-wheelers, and the bigger, heavier trucks and things are harder to cut into, takes a little longer. So if it's going to be one of those processes where it's going to be a lengthy time, then you may want to get in there and go ahead and start some IVs and do some things while oxygen, IVs, those types of things while you're waiting. Terminology. Let's clear up some terminology in these things. There's two terms that are usually used in patients in vehicle accidents. One term is a pin-in, and the other term is entrapment. What is the difference between those two terms?
Pin-in means you're actually pinned in the vehicle, that the person cannot move around inside. Entrapment means they just can't get out.
Okay. So two very different meanings. With entrapment, the person can actually move like from one seat to another in the vehicle. They just cannot exit the vehicle because doors won't open, windows won't open, or things have been smashed to the point where they can't get out or crawl out. So the extrication part of that is gaining an access for them so that they can exit the vehicle. With the pin-in, some part of the vehicle is actually holding that person in place so that they cannot move. Typically, what we see with that is going to be a dash or steering wheel, or to be a brake or accelerator pedal will have their foot smashed against the floor and stuck. The dash may have their legs or knees pinned so that they can't move. So those types of things. Given those definitions for that terminology, which event seems to be more serious?
A pin-in.
Okay, so the pin-in is actually keeping them from moving, and so typically that is the more serious situation, and the more intricate extrication needed, because there's a part of the vehicle that's actually in contact with the body, and it's keeping them stuck in that spot. So we have to be careful with the extrication process to gain that access to that part of the vehicle and move it or remove it so that the person is able to move and we can get them out. These processes can be quick and easy, or they can be long and drawn out. So, some people can be extricated in a matter of 2 or 3 minutes, while others, it may take 30 or 40 or even longer. So it just depends on what type of vehicle it is. It depends on how the vehicle is damaged and positioned, and it depends on the people that are doing the extrication. Um, some of these firefighters, if they're not familiar with the equipment and they're not familiar with vehicles, they could struggle, and it could take a little while to get these folks out. So be aware of that. You'll see these things as this process goes along, and there's lots of techniques for cutting up cars, lots of tools that you can use. There's manual tools that can gain entry and popping doors, sledgehammers, axes, Halligan bars, pry bars, things like that. They can gain access with the door, or break a window or something. And then you've got the hydraulic tools for cutting and prying. So there's a series of rams and cutters and spreaders and different things that they can use to cut and gain access to these cars. As far as vehicle accidents go, when we arrive on scene of vehicle accidents, the assessment part, the scene survey and assessment part goes pretty much the same as with a medical call or a trauma call. We're looking, we start out with our PPE and scene safety. And at vehicle accidents, what are some scene safety concerns that we have, or things that we're looking for?
Want to make sure the vehicle is not leaking any fluids that you could possibly be walking into that could be contaminated. Make sure the vehicle's not on fire or engaged the closer you get to it.
Traffic control should be number one.
All right. So traffic control is a priority. We have ways of parking our emergency vehicles on the roadways now to help shield us and block traffic. The looky-loos are going to be coming by and not paying attention. So that is one of the reasons why you have those very required bright color vests that you're supposed to be wearing, so that when you get run over, you can actually get some money from your employers and workman's comp and all that stuff. So watch out for traffic. That's always going to be a factor. As Chris said, when we're approaching the vehicle, we're looking for fluids. Most importantly, the fuel, because all the fluids will get taken care of by the fire department. They'll get soaked up. The oils, the transmission fluids, the coolants, those types of things. But the one that's most hazardous for us is the fuel, and most likely to cause issues such as fires. Also, make sure the vehicle is not on fire. That's important as well. If it is on fire, that changes the urgency of extrication. Remember, at the beginning of this course, we talked about different patient moves. You've got some patient moves, you've got an emergency move. And if this vehicle were on fire, that's what this would turn into, would be an emergency move. We're going to do whatever we can and as quickly as we can to get those folks out. So if you can't put the fire out, then you need to get the people out of the vehicle. So be mindful of that. What other hazards?
Make sure the vehicle's stable. You want to make sure the vehicle's stable too before you go near it or get into it.
Absolutely. Stabilizing the vehicle, that's going to be one of the first things the fire departments do before they start the extrication process. So they've got a series of tools. If you guys are not altogether familiar, they've got some different types of blocks. It could be wooden blocks, or they could be some commercial grade manufactured thing. We call that cribbing. And that's one of those bold words in your book, in the chapter. That's for stabilizing. There's also some struts and different rigging stuff that they have to stabilize vehicles. So if the vehicle is on all four wheels, the stabilizing process will be fairly minimal and quick. But if the vehicle is on its side, upside down, down an embankment, in a ditch, there's different, on top of another vehicle, there's all kinds of possibilities and situations that they're going to require a little more intrinsic and a little more extensive stabilization, so that when they start cutting on this thing and trying to get somebody out, it doesn't shift and move and roll over on the workers. So stabilizing is very important. What else?
Watch out for the airbags because they may not have deployed. There may have been something that didn't go through, and then you stick your head in and it goes off.
There you go. Airbag deployment. It's easy to see them after they've deployed. You'll see the empty bag laying there in the steering wheel, in the dash. Remember, on these newer vehicles now, a lot of them have the side curtain airbags, which come down over the windows, and they come out at your sides, so they help protect you all around now for the drivers and passengers. So if you're going to be in the position of maybe crawling into the vehicle to gain access to the patient, either before or while the extrication process is going, be mindful of these airbags, and especially the ones that have already deployed are not an issue, but the ones that have not deployed, they are loaded charges and able to shoot out at any moment. So be careful of that. If these fire guys that are cutting on these vehicles don't know exactly what they're doing and where they're cutting, they have the potential to cut into those some of those cylinders and charges, and they could cut those things and cause some things to happen. So be careful with that. Some other hazards.
Are they still making the bumpers that fly off the cars?
Yeah, those shock bumpers.
Yeah.
They've got those piston shocks on them, and they can shoot out the front and rear. So not advised to stand directly in front or behind the car because of those bumpers. They'll come off. They'll take your legs right out from you. What are some other hazards to be watching out for?
People on scene.
People on scene?
Yep.
We always tend to generate a crowd wherever we go, especially if it's a pretty decent accident, or an accident that has a lot of vehicles involved, or a specific type of vehicle involved. What's the number one vehicle that can get a crowd there faster than emergency services?
School bus.
Yes. Let them say school bus accident over the radio, and the people will beat you there.
Just general environmental hazards.
Okay, such as?
Weather.
Yep. Rain, snow, ice, all of these things make conditions more difficult for us. It makes driving more treacherous with snow and ice and rain.
The
It makes
condition where the wreck happened.
What's that?
The road condition where the wreck happened, like in a tight bend, or they had ditches on both sides of the road.
Okay.
So I guess the
They hit a
geography
tree
of
or a
it.
sign or a carport and it hasn't finished falling.
Okay, so some unstable things that are involved in the accident: trees, maybe pushed over if the vehicles hit buildings that are unstable now because of the accident. You have the potential for collapse or falling debris. The same with power lines. Watch out for power lines. If they hit a pole and knock it over, the lines are loose. The thing you need to know about power lines is that they're nothing like extension cords. So do not try to step over them like you would an extension cord. If power lines are down on the ground and they're still energized, that electricity can jump. You don't have to come in contact with it. You only have to get close to it, and that electricity can actually jump off of that line to you. So don't ever step over power lines. Go around them and give them plenty of room, like 10 to 20 feet. Don't be next to them until you are absolutely certain that the electricity is off. Any other concerns?
I think that's pretty much all of them, unless we're missing a key one that we just kind of overlooked.
So what about these new hybrids and electric vehicles?
Don't cut the orange cord.
All right, there you go. These things are not like your regular 12-volt batteries that are in most vehicles. If you've got a regular gasoline or diesel engine, you've probably got one or maybe two 12-volt batteries in your vehicle that you can cut. You can disconnect the negative cable or cut it, and that'll kill the power to the whole vehicle. With these hybrids and electric vehicles, that is not the case. They've got these big battery cells in them with a lot more power than that little 12-volter. And as Brian said, don't cut the orange cable. There's some warning signs in there. So one of the things the fire department does in vehicle accidents is they will disable the vehicle electrical system for safety. Once they disable the electrical system, hopefully that takes away all of the ignition sources. Hopefully that takes away the power needed to discharge airbags and that sort of thing. So it's a safety thing that they do. However, these hybrids and electric cars are quite different, and there's a different way to disable the electrical system. So if you're not familiar with it, don't do it. Let those other folks do it that should know how to do it, but don't go cutting cables on those cars because you could take a hit. All right, so quite a few hazards that are out there, and one more hazard that I'll mention now and we'll talk about a lot in the next chapter is these vehicles that are hauling cargo. When we get into the hazmat chapter, there could be some hazardous cargo that if you're dealing with a transport truck or an 18-wheeler with a box trailer that's got some different packaging and cargo in it. So, but we'll focus on hazmat stuff in the next chapter.
Or pigs or chicken.
Okay, animals. Your book mentions animals. People travel with animals in their vehicles. They have pets, or they may have animal cargo. Be aware of those things. Some of those animals may not be friendly. People have exotic animals. They like their weird snakes and different things like that. So just be mindful. Those things could still be in the vehicle when you get to them. All right. So vehicle accidents, they happen quite frequently. We roll on those a lot. Most of them we don't have to do extrication on. There are a few that we do. So as you survey the scene when you arrive, be mindful of these things. Park your vehicle in a way that helps protect you and the patients. The fire trucks will be doing the same thing. They've got a method of using multiple trucks and parking at angles so that they can divert traffic over into other lanes and shut things down and help protect the workers as they're out on the scene. In spite of all that, be extra careful when you're walking around because people are driving and not paying attention, especially at night when it's more difficult to see. But in the daytime as well, that you read it in the news all the time that either a police officer or firefighter or EMS person was struck by a vehicle at a vehicle accident. So when you're working in the roadways, you guys all know the drill. Put the vest on. Make sure that you have that bright vest on. It's for your protection, and be careful when you're walking around. Don't walk around a vehicle into another lane because there could be traffic coming by, and those folks will take you out. So watch out for that stuff in these operations. Your safety is the number one importance. So try not to get run over. Aside from vehicle extrication and vehicle accidents, what other types of rescue operations could we potentially find ourselves dealing with?
Water rescue.
Water rescue,
High angle, low angle.
high angle, low angle rescue,
Grain bin rescues.
grain bin.
Farm equipment rescues.
Okay, farm machinery.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a long list. We'll start with these. Let's talk about water rescue for a minute. There are a couple different types of water rescue. One is swift water rescue, and that's when the water is actually moving and moving at a pace. And the other is just water rescue, which is kind of stationary waters,
Surface
which is what we have here. Northeast North Carolina has a ton of water. Most of it is not swift water. We have large bodies of water, but usually not much current,
Ice
not
rescue.
much flow. You guys down at the beach, you have ocean rescue, so you have the ocean waters, which do have a pretty strong current and waves and that sort of stuff. But most inland waters are fairly calm and tame on most days, unless there's a storm or something. They may get choppy and rough. As far as water rescue goes, there's not too many agencies that have access to actually get into the water. I know Prequimans has a couple of boats. In Edenton, the sheriff's department has a boat, and I know in Elizabeth
Is that
City.
running?
Yeah, it's brand new, man.
Okay, the last time I heard they blew the engine up on one of them.
Yeah, they had the old boat. They just got a new one a year or two ago, and it's a brand new boat. So, Elizabeth City Fire Department has a boat, and of course, if you get down to the beach, they've got all kinds of water crafts. They've got jet skis and boats and all that stuff for their ocean rescue. And certainly they can put it out over in the Sound if they need to, along with lifeguards along the beaches. And in anything else that's going on is going to be the Coast Guard. So they've got some small boats that they can put in the water, and they can trailer those around. And then they have helicopters that they can launch and put those out over the water anywhere and pick some folks up. So if you and then they also have some bigger boats down in Dare County. So down at Oregon Inlet and Hatteras, the Coast Guard has some bigger boats down there that they can take out in the ocean and look for folks and bring back. They can tow boats in and stuff like that. So if you need any of these resources, don't hesitate to call. But I will tell you this: if you're not trained to do this type of work, then please don't try to do it, because you're gonna get yourself in a bad situation and potentially get hurt or killed. Swift water is the thing that gets a lot of folks. Typically, that happens with heavy downpours of rain, and that water starts moving, and usually in the higher elevations where the flow has a bigger gravity change. So those swiftwater teams have special training, they have special equipment, but whenever you're working around the water, if you're on a boat that's doing searches, if you're on a boat that's heading out to find a person or help someone, you are required to have a personal flotation device on. So make sure that you do. So if you're on these teams that can get in a boat and go, make sure you're putting on that safety equipment. That is for your safety. It doesn't help anybody else except you. So make sure you're wearing that stuff. It's just like the vest in the road. That reflective vest is for your safety. So make sure you're wearing it. What else did y'all say? Somebody said farm machinery, farm equipment. There's a lot of farming in this area. There's a lot of farm machinery and equipment in this area. There are also a lot of grain bins in this area. So those things are certainly possibilities for us. Know that there's been a lot of trainings held with the grain bin rescues, people falling into grain bins that are full of grain, and that becomes like quicksand to them. They start to sink, and they get trapped in there. They can't move, they can't breathe. There is a very technical way to get them out, and it works, but it takes a little bit of time to set it all up and get all that equipment to you and get it in place to do that rescue. Don't try to go in there. If you try to go in there without any protection and equipment, you're going to end up just like the person that's already in there. So make sure that you're trained on how that operation works and you know what to expect. With farm machinery, there's the potential for entanglements, usually arms or legs getting hung in this stuff. And most of the time it comes in the form of these farmers working on the equipment because the equipment is broken or not working properly. So they're trying to work on it, and then something starts up or something moves, and they'll get a hand or an arm hung in it, pinched or stuck, and they're going to require some extrication to get out of that. So be aware of those things. Also, lots of lawnmowers in this area, so watch out for that equipment as well. These lawnmowers now have lots of safety features on them, safety features that cut them off. So hopefully you don't have to deal with limbs getting cut and that sort of thing. But just be aware. Potential for these traumatic injuries is quite high. High angle, low angle. Somebody said high angle, low angle. If it's a high angle rescue in this area, it's probably in a building or a construction site type of thing. We don't have a lot of high angle stuff. We're pretty flat in elevation. So if we're doing any high angle rescue, it's probably going to be in some type of building or construction area. I guess, everything for Chris down at the beach is high angle, because most of those houses are 2 or 3 stories and they're elevated 1 story off the ground. So if those folks are doing like roof work or something down there, they're 3 or 4 stories up to do that. So if they're up on a roof, then that could be an event there. A lot of things that we could get into the confined space rescue type of situation. There are confined spaces everywhere. Typically, we think of these as like manholes, um, underground spaces for working. Yeah, you'll see those workers going in those holes. But a confined space is defined as any space that has limited access and is not suitable for continuous habitation. So any place that you wouldn't normally be, and limited access in and out of it. And those that qualifies a whole lot of spaces. So you can think of work like in big fuel tanks, the manholes, things like that. So there's a lot of that possibility as well, confined space work. What's the biggest hazard for us with confined spaces?
The equipment, depending how far down you got to go or how longitude or latitude you have to go with to get to that patient. Because most ambulances, we don't carry that type of oxygen and all that, and we don't carry all that equipment and cord to get to somebody like that.
No, that's going to be a special rescue type of situation. So we're not equipped to do that. But the hazards in confined space rescue operations, the biggest hazard is the atmosphere. And that's typically the hazard that causes us to be there in a rescue mode. Is there's something in the atmosphere, or there's a change in the atmosphere that has made this person need rescuing. So atmospheric monitoring is vital in confined spaces, and typically if they're doing work in there, if it is a confined space and somebody's working in it, they've had to have monitored the atmosphere and make sure that there's no harmful gases in the atmosphere, that there's plenty of oxygen so that they can work. If those things do not exist, then they may have blowers set up to blow fresh air in, or change the atmosphere. If they can't do that and get everything right, then they'll be wearing PPE in those holes and confined spaces so that they can breathe fresh air, or and not breathe the hazardous atmosphere. So the biggest thing for us to be mindful of is the atmosphere. That's why if you're going to a confined space rescue, do not go in that hole or in that space without monitoring the atmosphere. If you don't carry atmospheric monitors, then wait for the fire department. They'll have them. They can check the atmosphere, make sure there's enough oxygen, look for other things that may be there, like carbon monoxide or hydrogen sulfide, or different other chemicals that could cause problems. Do you guys have any questions about rescue operations or extrication operations? Anything specifically you want to know or something that's not clear to you?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
All right. So as you go through this chapter in your book, there's a section there. They have like 7 phases of rescue operations. So I would become familiar with those and what each one of those phases is and how to distinguish between them. There's some buzzwords in there, cribbing and other boldface words. So make sure you understand what those things are. And they have a list of the different types of tools used in extrication. So there's pneumatic tools, there's hydraulic tools, there's manual hand tools, different things. So if you haven't been around the extrication process that much and you're not very familiar, then spend some time reading this chapter and going through it a couple times to make sure that you understand how this operation works. All right. Does anybody have any questions in general?
Yeah, MedMath with Tylenol. Specifically the ones that we carry on the truck, the liquid Tylenol.
Yeah.
I just need a refresher in calculating the dosage on that, considering it comes to, was it like 629 milliliters or something crazy like that?
The Tylenol is usually, the liquid Tylenol is in 2 different sizes. You've
I
got
know
those.
that we have a 160.
You have those cups, and there's a 160, and then there's like a 650 or something.
0.2 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. If you do the math, it works out to the exact same amount of Tylenol. So don't let those 2 sizes mess with you, or those 2 numbers mess with you. The key is you need to know what the dose is. So what's the dose of Tylenol? Adult and pediatric.
That was 1,000 milligrams.
Okay.
And what pediatric is 10 milligrams per kilogram? Or is that Motrin? One's 10, one's 15. I think it's 10.
Does anybody want to confirm if it's 10 or 15?
Yeah, it's 10.
Okay. So 10 milligrams per kilogram for peds, 1,000 milligrams for adults. And it's the packaging. I don't have it with me, so I don't have that memorized, but I know that the smaller container is like 160 milligrams per however many mLs, and the bigger one is like 650 or something, so somewhere around 650 milligrams. So but when you I want to say I'll have to get my hands on it to be exactly sure, but I do know that the 2 how they're supplied, the 160 is in so many mLs and the 650 is in more mLs, but it's exactly the same concentration. So it's just different amounts. So don't let those numbers throw you off. What you need to do is, for the pediatrics, you have to have a weight, and then it's 10 milligrams per kilogram. So let's suppose they weigh 20 kilograms. How much would you give them?
20 times 10. 200 milligrams?
200 milligrams. So if that little container has 160 milligrams in it,
It ain't gonna get the job done.
that's not enough. So you're going to have to open 2 of those and draw up, all of one and part of the other. Or you can open the one big one and you need about a third of it. So either way, with these, you're going to have a bit of waste associated with them. But I will. We'll work on that in the lab this week, and I'll make sure that I get I'll get the right numbers from those. From the way it's packaged. I'm making a note here so that I get it. I'll get those. I'll get those 2 sets of numbers for you, Brian, and we'll work on that.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?